What's spookier than an army of ghosts? An invincible army of ghosts, which is what we're going to make today to conquer the Empire lands. And to do this, there is only one man that can lead, because unfortunately there are no ghost lords in the game. As I said, there are no ghost lords in the game. It is, of course, this guy. State your name for the record, sir.
Heinrich Kemmler.
And would you like to bring a friend along today?
Oh yes. Where is Krell?
The old Krell.
Alright, we got Kemmler, we got Krell, let's go. Although actually, before we do, did anyone notice in that shot that Kemmler is actually wearing slippers? The man goes to battle in slippers. 7 years, I've never noticed. What a G. So starting off a very hard campaign with Kemmler, we will use but only ghosts. Now Kemmler is a nice one for this because he actually starts with a couple of ghosty units. We do get a hero, but he's not a ghost, so we will just use him as an agent, but apparently he only speaks one language, Philia. Nevertheless, we must push on to our first battle, which looks a little daunting, 3 units versus 7, but then you remember that, well, we are ghosts, and they are French, so it only really ends one way. Our ghosty boys have that fear and terror, which is great for getting rid of these low leadership units very quickly. Only the knights are a little bit of a problem. And of course, we technically do have Krell as our 4th unit, who could probably solo this army by himself. So of course, there was victory to be had. From here, I had to wait around a bit to get to tier 3 so that I could construct my ghosty buildings. And if you're one of those that wonders why I'm always insulting elves in my videos, well, this is why. Declaring war on me on turn 9 when I'm nowhere near them. And on the next turn, absolute dick. Well done, big man. You've come all the way over to besiege an old man in his house. Brilliant. As this did happen to be a siege defense, I decided to take on Stig of the Dump and show him what a foolish mistake he'd made. He was met with bone and steel as his smelly elves came up the ladders, and we held them in at the 2 main gates they attacked. We wore them down gradually with zombies and skeletons, and then had the ghosty boys go in and try to do as much damage as possible. We had towers helping out as well. They did have some other units that snuck in through other doorways, but they were easily dispatched. And if you wonder why I don't have a map in any of these battles, it's because I accidentally changed the difficulty to legendary, which puts on battle realism, but doesn't turn it off when you change back to very hard. A few turns on from this battle, and I've now got to tier 3. I can recruit Banshees and Kernwraiths once I've got those buildings. And I'm also going to be following this Liber Necronomica tech line so that I can get these buffs to all my ghosties, which ultimately results in doubling their healing cap and giving them a goddamn barrier. Nasty. A little further on and I can now get a Banshee hero, which I'm going to embed into the army. And once I get to tier 4, I can also upgrade this building to then get Hex Wraiths as well. Shortly after this, Carrick Ziflin declared war on me, and you know when 2 guys kind of square up to each other and they kind of make it look like they want to fight each other, but they don't really want to, so they just stand there hurling insults at each other? That's pretty much what's going on here. I'm gonna get you. You can't beat me, I know Wing Chun. For me, I was just biding my time until I got Kernwraiths, and eventually it came along and I started to recruit them like nobody's business. But eventually Ziflin had a full stack and there were some wood elves around, but on the next turn they made the biggest mistake of their lives, moving down to Montfort, and the wood elves buggered off, so that left me free to take Carrick Ziflin itself, finally able to take another settlement in my province at turn 20 goddamn 6. For more ghosty buffs, I started putting Heinrich's skill points into Evil Souls, a little spell resistance to start with. Ziflin, determined to self-destruct, apparently ran their big full army seemingly around to get my other settlement, but left their last remaining settlement undefended and thus an easy take to raze to the ground. What was funny then, though, is that they came back to maybe seemingly retake that settlement. My army, too beaten up to take out their army, I just went back to replenish, but over the next turn that joker Karl Franz came along and took the settlement before they could move back in, and thus those dwarves were homeless. And on a serious note, if you'd like to donate to help these dwarves, please contact this number, 1-800-HELP-THE-SHORT. Any donation will help, thank you. These poor homeless dwarves made the mistake of stumbling into my land, though, which meant I had to deal with them in the kindest way a ghost would know possible, which is murder and death. So I swiftly went after them, developed a mass envelopment plan to make sure none of them could escape. I tied them up with the crappy garrison skeletons and stuff, and then sent all the ghosties around the sides. And with the armor piercing of the Kernwraiths, these poor little dwarves didn't really stand much of a chance. I had my 1 unit of Hex Wraiths being disruptive as possible, trying to keep them alive though, keeping invocation on them, keeping them healed, because they're the only one I've got for now. So we smashed them into the ground, they retreated, we went and finished them off. That was the end of Carrick Ziflin. Shortly after this, Stig of the Dump realized that he was outmatched and decided to beg for peace, which I so graciously gave him so that I could focus on my bigger plans of taking out the French. Once this superior position has been conquered, I can then use that to move on to the Empire. Because you see, Heinrich has a pretty horrible start position, surrounded by good guys, and he's the only bad guy in the middle of it. So I want to take this kind of edge of the land province so I'm not so surrounded. Coming into this battle, I actually tried to fight it and win that way. I try not to just cheese it and go for the victory objectives, which is what I normally do because I don't really enjoy sieges, but I fought it through. I did make a blunder and lose a bunch of cairn wraiths, but luckily for me, the French had very kindly already constructed the building I needed to recruit more cairn wraiths, so recruitment was no problem. And if you're wondering why the Bretonnians hadn't defended their land, it's because they were attacking Castle Artois. They're at war with Grom, they were trying to take that off him. They seemingly failed to do that, and their armies kind of spread out. One of them maybe looks like it might be heading towards my other land, so I'm a little bit worried about that, but we got a fair garrison there, and it's only the French. On the next turn, though, they seem to commit efforts to trying to reclaim Cologne, though, and as there are 2 stacks in the area, I try to take one out so not to be outnumbered. Honestly, though, this is a pretty rough fight for the Bretonnians. Their low leadership plus my fear and terror, like I mentioned earlier, they just break so quickly. Plus, we got the big physical resistance, so they can't damage us quick enough, and they pretty much instantly break if you hit them on both sides with a bit of flanking, so Bretonnians don't last long. This situation right here pretty much sums it up. Running scared from the ghosties. Although I've got them beaten up, I'm not quite able to finish that army off, so I fall back and try to set up an ambush in case they try to come and take Cologne. But things go from bad to worse for the Frenchies as the Shadow Legion appear on their shores, who they are at war with. Now, because their main full stack is inside the settlement, I besiege it with a single lone lord, which of course traps the army and its garrison inside the settlement, meaning they can't reinforce any armies outside the settlement, which is the one I just beat up just now, so I'm going to come along and finish that army off. It's in force march as well, so it's just in all kind of bad situations. And with that, we got the Bretonnians on the ropes. I'm not able to finish off that settlement right there, though, with a full stack in it, so I have to fall back and replenish. But about now is where I'm finally able to get the perpetual regeneration trait, which is absolutely disgusting for my ghosty army, as it gives them all regeneration, as long as they're rank 7 or above. And as you can see, I'm pretty close with a few units here. But around this time as well, I completed that tech that I was trying to unlock, which now gives a barrier and extra healing cap. So couple that with the regeneration, and you've got a fucking disgusting ghost army. As you saw, I just took Languil with the Bretonnian army seemingly giving it up, running off into Lyonesse lands to try and save themselves. I tried to chase them down, but they were elusive. I think Grom was after them as well. But they did raise an army over in Gruntzint, their last remaining settlement. But I patiently waited in ambush for them, and I got them. And with a swift auto-resolve, that put an end to the Bretonnians' hope of ever reclaiming their homeland. But Lyonesse came and did me dirty as they attacked Languil. Honestly, I didn't even know I was at war with them. I don't think they declared it at any point. I guess they just joined it from Bretonnia. I don't know. But I was finally able to come and take Gruntzint at least, which was significant because it's actually part of my starting province, which I've only now just been able to take. So it's got to be one of the worst starting provinces in the game. Eventually, I came back around, took out Lyonesse for stealing my shit, beat them on the face, and then came along to take their main capital settlement of Lyonesse as well, and claimed it as my own. Although I had no intention of keeping it, I wanted to use it to bargain with Big Boy Grom. So I offered to trade it to him, and he was fucking chuffed with it. Look how happy he is. He's offering me literally everything. I only took the non-aggression and the military access for now. I didn't want to get too friendly with him and get dragged into all his wars. But now at least I didn't have to worry about my west or south. And just in time for my invasion of the Empire, I'm now able to recruit Hex Wraiths, which I'm most likely going to need because the Empire has got a pretty big empire at this point, so we're going to have our work cut out for us. So we're going to go ahead and declare war and start off by taking Marienburg, as it's A, right next to us, and B, a nice money-making settlement to have. I then push on into the Reichland to take Eilhart so that I can start spreading my lovely vampire corruption around. As I look to move towards Uberstreich, there is an army there, so I'm a little bit thwarted for now. And I'm trying to take any technology I can that'll help out my ghosty boys. I'm getting these to help out Mortis engines, which I'll be able to get soon. I tried to set up an ambush to catch one of these armies with an 80% success chance, but of course it fails, because it's actually probably like a 30% success chance, and they're just lying to me. Bastards. So I have to fight this battle, and a small portion of the army starts here, right in front of my reinforcing army, so they're dead. My ghosts then head into town to help the reinforcing army, which they do need, as a lot of this Empire army is now pushing in quite aggressively into the town. But I am slowly but surely kind of setting up a bit of an envelopment ambush here. I come in from the east with the main ghosty army, but also send some units around the flank to get behind and just absolutely crush them in the middle. And then it's the beginning of the end for this main army, but the reinforcing army is on the way. It started miles away, so it's taken a while to get here. And apparently Karl Franz has been to the North Pole because he's recruited these Will Ferrell elves from somewhere. But alas, the reinforcing army arrives, but Zerky has a plan, of course. Sending Krell to decapitate men was the first part of that plan, and then I had some units, some cairn wraiths, flank around all the way around the side of the settlement to come up behind this unsuspecting reinforcing army, and well, you can imagine they all got pretty fucking spooked. Especially as this second reinforcing army was pretty much just a cheap crappy spearmen and cheap crappy archers, so they didn't last long. From there, I pushed on to take Ubersreich as the other crappy army was still around, but I'd deal with that, right? I was also getting into the higher end of Kemmler's red skill line, which was giving me some nice buffs to my ghosty boys. And as I happened to be nearby, I decided to take the Helmgart fort just to get that taken away from the Empire. But in doing so, I left Eilhart undefended, which meant the Empire came back for it with that crappy little army, plus an extra one. But luckily, they only decided to sack it and not occupy it. And about now, I decided it's time to get a second army. I'm going to be dealing with a lot of armies. I need more ghosts. I was now able to get mortis engines, so they were no doubt going to help as well. And that crappy little army of spearmen and archers came to terrorize me. It came and sacked Ubersreich. It came and sacked Helmgart. But eventually I was able to chase them down, get a hold of them, and turn them into ghosts. From there, I thought I'd be able to push on and carry on taking the Reichland, but oh no, more Empire armies. How many do they have? I fought this battle. It was a bit of a messy one though, just overrunning them and enveloping them with ghosts as usual. And what I'd been doing at the end of pretty much all these battles is healing my boys up, sometimes specifically picking out the more beaten up units, but I came to find that I was very often ending battles in pretty good goddamn condition, making us just start to feel a little bit invincible, apart from this unit that died. My second army, much like your genitals, was small but powerful and ready to strike, and started to advance to take the rest of the Marienburg province. My main army, large and powerful, much like my beard, came to advance on Grunsburg, a battle which I fought to get the best result, and this is where my invincible army really started to grow. You can see all the gold chevrons starting to appear, so those units are regenerating in battle. I've got the mortis engine in this army now. I'm using invocation at the end of the battles to resurrect the units as well. So this army is pretty much invincible. And we've now captured Grunsburg, so it's just Altdorf left. My small second army up north is about to capture the final settlement in this province, so we'll complete that one, and we'll clear out the Empire in the north as well. And then it came time for the big boy. Let's take down Altdorf. There's a small army there. There's a big garrison there. It's a Pyrrhic victory auto-resolve, but I'll do the Empire the courtesy of fighting this battle the respectable way, by hiding all my ghosts in the trees and then bringing them out later. The only unit they could see was the mortis engine, so they built around that, but I had ghosts all over the place. I planned to come in from every direction possible and take as many capture points as I could. I sure hope I don't get copyrighted for using this scene from Lord of the Rings. Over the main side where I sent the mortis engine, I summoned up Krell and just let him go to town to distract most of their garrison, whilst bringing in the other cavalry units and Kernwraiths all over the place just to attack what we could. Started taking those victory points, no problem, getting rid of towers. Mortis engines in there, healing up, doing the direct damage as well. Krell was apparently having a lot of fun, judging by all the bodies around. And eventually, slowly but surely, we overran them, took out a lot of their units, actually did win by beating the army and not by taking the victory objective, although we did take most of the settlement. And I did it all only losing 7 ghosts, apparently, although, you know, I probably did lose more, but I brought them back to life because that's what we do here. Hence, full health army. With that, Altdorf was ours, the Reichland was ours, and it was the beginning of the end for the Empire. From here, I pushed on to take Karabberg, just to take that off them. I pushed on to try and take Nuln, but there was maybe a little bit too much there for now, so I came back to that one. They did come out to get me with 3 stacks, but luckily I was able to retreat from that for now to look for a better situation. And eventually I found one as I came back to attack Nuln with a lesser army inside, which was in force march as well. I could have taken the Pyrrhic victory, but there was another big stack not far away, so I didn't want to risk having a beaten up army. I fought this one just in a straight up good old siege form. I came at them from both sides with 2 very obvious armies, no tricks. Luckily my ghosts had their ladders with them. Jesus Christ. Otherwise, I don't know how they would have gotten up the walls. It's not like they're fucking ghosts or something. Here's that scene from Lord of the Rings again. This time Gandalf's in there. Gandalf the Black. This must be the Chinese bootleg version. My ghosties poured in though, all over Nuln. There was little the Empire could do to stop them. We came at them from all angles. It didn't take long to spook them all off, of course. Didn't even need to get anywhere near the victory objectives. And with that, Nuln fell, and then pretty much everything started falling for the Empire. They had that one big army left, which was Karl Franz himself, sat in Dotenbach, which I just decided to auto-resolve because I didn't have any other threats around, so I could take the time to replenish. One small army could apparently get a victory at Karabberg, even though it had only 4 units of missiles, so I fought that one to get rid of them. But at this point, I had dwindled the Empire's empire significantly. I was hoping that the von Carsteins would maybe do a bit more and they'd rise up and take a few settlements and help me, or that maybe I'd be able to confederate them at some point, but no sign of that yet. As I started to move east, I was attacked by another big Empire army, but once again, it was just an absolute massacre that I came out of with full health. I then pushed on to Kemperbad, where I besieged with a single lord and then took out the army with my main army, and then of course proceeded to take Kemperbad after that. My second army up north was now taking the Black Pit of the Empire, so they were pretty much done up north now. and then it was just a case of absolutely mowing down all the southern kingdoms that they still had, taking pretty much all these settlements with very little resistance. They hadn't spawned up any more armies over here. I guess they were starting to run out of money. They were running out of recruitment buildings. They did confederate Nordland, which then opened up more space in the north for me to get rid of. And guess who it was that actually came back to cause problems for me? Fucking Toddy. He came and took Karaburg off me. He came and sacked Isleheart. And it turns out the Empire was still alive. They had a couple more armies up north, which came and attacked my second army. I had to fight these, which were a little bit tougher, these battles, because my second army wasn't as strong as my main army, because it didn't have the regeneration and stuff. But despite defeating them, it did kind of halt my advance. I wasn't able to push on into Dieterschafen here, as they still had those two armies around. But about now, any human man faction was completely eradicated in the southern territory of the Empire lands. And it was now that son of a bitch, Toddy, who was the biggest problem, as he came back to Isleheart with a big army and actually took it off me this time. But I was able to counter that and put him in check by taking Karaburg off him, as I happened to be stationed at Altdorf. And of course, we eventually met on the battlefield to settle this, and this was my third army that I'd made, so they weren't as strong as the main army or even the second army, and they did struggle a bit with this fight. Toddy put up a good fight, we'll give him that, but ultimately he did get spooked like everybody else. And then of course I chased him down, finished him off, and reclaimed Isleheart to free the people from potentially being saved. And now there was pretty much no men left in most of the Empire lands. Dreiker had pushed out a bit, von Karstein had pushed out a bit, and now the Norskans had arrived. And they were very kindly going to take out the last Empire settlements to save me the job. How very, very kind of them. But goddamn Karl Franz wasn't going down easy, as he came and attacked Black Pit, which maybe I could have fought to defend, but my armies were nearby. I was going to close in and finish him off in one nice final battle. But the Norskans beat me to it. So with that, the Empire was completely eradicated from the Empire lands. Absolutely glorious. But I still needed a final battle, and there were still elves in this area. So there was only one logical conclusion: kill all the elves. I herded those little bastards all around their precious little tree, killing everything in sight whilst taking pretty much no damage by the end of it. We had 2 full stacks of ghosties rolling in on these elves, and even though they did have a fair few units with magical attacks in this army, which are a detriment to our poor ghosty boys, it wasn't enough to save them. Krell was having a great time lopping off heads and arms wherever he felt like it. He was living the dream. The poor little elves tried to hide up on their little barricades to keep themselves safe, but no one's safe from the ghosty boys. We overran them with overwhelming numbers, flanked, surrounded, wherever possible, just scared everything away. This was a personal highlight, these elves up on their barricade, my boys chopping it down, and then my hex wraiths just laying in wait for that barricade to go, and when it does, all the elves tumble to the ground and then get mowed down and absolutely destroyed. So there we have it. The ghost armies are pretty damn strong in the hands of Heinrich Kemmler, and we'd have no problem finishing this campaign, I'm sure. But there we go. I hope you've enjoyed this. Thanks for watching. Thanks to all the patrons who support this channel. If you want more of this kind of stuff, I got a whole playlist of it right here. I'll see you in the future.